We are Ole Miss Rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. Now we're going to do things a little different. We are going to provide an honest look at Ole Miss athletics for the fan, by the fan, and of the fan. That is what we do. Hell be to me. I'm just kidding. Tune in for some Ole Miss sports news. We're going to give it to you straight. Yeah, right now. The POMcast starts now. It happens now. Holy cow. Listen to me. It's starting. Well, it's going to start right about now. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the POMcast. I'm your host on this magical mystery tour that we call Ole Miss Fandom, Stephen Willis from the palatial Central Florida studios. Welcome to the POMcast. Yesterday's podcast, I do want to take a second to brag. Most watched video in Positively Ole Miss history. Not only are we over 2,000 views, a single source is over 1,000 views, which is the second time that's happened, and it's different sources. So that's kind of what we're growing. For those who don't know, that this pops up on your timeline and you watch it however you watch it. We are on 9 different video sources, including we have a pod source as well, but we don't really market to that or do anything to that. We do that because we want you to basically be able to take this on the road whenever you're driving. It's a nice, safe way to listen to what we're talking about. But yesterday was a fantastic day for Positively Ole Miss. Huge numbers, huge reaction over what was said, and I believe only one comment naysaying what was said the whole day. Out of all those views, one negative comment was made the whole day. And that's a fantastic ratio. So thank you very much for that. Yesterday was all about you. All we did was put forth ideas and you listened to it and kind of took it in. So thank you very much for that. Before we get started today, I do want to tell you about the Vault Society. Vault Society is the big push from the Ole Miss Athletics Foundation, which is a 5-year commitment of support. Membership starts at $5,000 a year, and there's a benefit chart on the site, which we'll give you that address in just a second. All gifts to Ole Miss between now and June 30th will receive triple points. Red points are non-deductible and go towards priority seating. Blue points are 90% tax deductible and go towards parking and non-home ticketed games. That'd be postseason bowl games, neutral site. There's a nice game on Labor Day that would fit that nicely. If you have any questions about it, you can go to give2athletics.com. Again, that is give2athletics.com. All right, I told you about these sources before. We are actually on Twitter at the Stephen Willis and at the Rebel Walk. You can watch it either of those. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast. That'd be POMcast or the Rebel Walk. You can catch us there. We're on YouTube at Positively Ole Miss. Hit the bell, subscribe. Even if you listen at other spots normally, it is still good to do that because you can subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and not only will tell you that we're streaming, it'll tell you what we're streaming about so you can determine whether or not you want to give any time or effort into that. So that's a good beneficial tool for you. We're on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss, all one word. We also have a couple of catch-all channels that does Ole Miss and non-Ole Miss related stuff at Willis Digital Media on YouTube and Willis Digital Media on Twitch. If audio is more your thing, we do have a podcast. We do not really pimp it that much, but we do have it. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and Pandora. Basically, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're there. And, enjoy it. But, if you can, watch the video. We have all this cool stuff over here, and plenty of stuff to look at. So thank you very much for that. Today's show is going to be about this massive rule change year in college sports. This is a year that has had the one-time transfer rule go through. This is a year where the playoff is going to be voted to expand, and it looks like it's going to happen, to go from 4 to 12 teams. It's going to completely change the face of college football, and I'm here to tell you why Ole Miss is uniquely positioned in that group of teams to where they're the big winner of this, even including name, image, and likeness, because they can play that game a little bit because they have money. But we'll start with the one-time transfer rule. Now, Blue Bloods, like Alabama and Ohio State, they're going to do business as usual, as opposed to signing 25 4- and 5-star players. They might sign 20 to 22 and leave 3 spots open for the transfer portal. There's not going to be a whole lot of room for them to pick and choose what they need because they don't have to. Logically, if it ain't broke, why would you fix it? So they're going to fight. They would fight against the one-time transfer rule. They would fight against all that because of the playoff expansion, because what is happening right now is working for them, all the way down to their enrollment numbers at their school. Right now, what was happening is working for them. So this is not really being pushed by them. That's what people need to understand. The one-time transfer fee, the expansion of the college football playoffs, it is not being pushed by the Blue Bloods, because those 5 or 6 teams were doing quite well the way the system was set up, and separation was starting to happen between them and the rest of the pack. That's the reason playoff expansion has happened in the first place. But so you rule out the Blue Bloods as the big beneficiary. You look at the tier below, and that's the tier I would put Ole Miss in. It's a decent tier. It's probably 30 or 40 teams, honestly, that are going to benefit greatly from this. You'll see them recruit somewhere in the 15 to 19 range of high school athletes, leaving 6 to 10 spots open yearly for one-time transfer. Now, they can look up to those 4- and 5-star players being signed by the Blue Bloods that might not be happy. They can look down for players that are excelling at the G5 level. You're already seeing G5 teams not wanting to play bye games because they don't want people to see these players. It's going to completely change the whole landscape of college football. People need to be aware of that. But Ole Miss will have the ability to look up at the quote Blue Bloods and look down at the G5 all the way down. If there's a player that fits their need, they can do it. This year, there was players from FCS trying to jump up. There was a player that went to the ACC from Jacksonville State. So that flexibility, along with the elite high school players that they can sign. So we're talking about 15 to 18 signed per class at Ole Miss. And then just leaving, 7 to 10 spots open after signing day for the ability to take transfers. Now, this is one thing that needs to be thought of. Intra-conference transfers have to be done before February 1st. So they'll be known before the late signing day. So if you're getting players from inside of the conference, 2 or 3 players going to an Ole Miss school from, let's say, Kentucky, you'll know going into signing day what your numbers are. So at the end of that, you might have, 2 or 3 spots open because your transfer should be known by February 1st. It's set up pretty much to where transfer season will happen before the late signing day. It'll happen in that little, light area that teams are doing recruiting the next year's class, because most of the class is done on the early signing day. So they're going to fill that up with basically transfers and try to some way do a business as usual. Now, who are the big losers of this one-time transfer rule. I think the biggest loser are going to be the low 3-star, high 2-star players. The players that were hitting fringes on P5 rosters. They probably didn't play very much. They end up transferring down anyway. But that scholarship offer that they were getting to Missouri or Texas Tech at the very end, that's probably going to go away. Now, the real benefit of that is, they're probably going to end up at a school that is more fitting of where they should be. They go from being the 80th man on the roster to the 40th, 35th man on the roster. So it's going to pump up the G5 areas into developmental football. It's going to pump up the FCS. It's going to end up with better players in the G5 and in the FCS. Just because those guys aren't getting scooped up by Power 5 programs. So you're going to see a little bit more parity in all of lower division college football. Now, thanks to the one-time transfer rule, those guys can move up one time. You can sign with Nicholls State and go out there and rush for 2,000 yards and know that you can leave after that year and go to a G5 program or a P5 program. That does nothing but benefit the players. You get to find your level. There's some players that misjudge their own level and go to a P5 school and sit the bench for 4 years. There's other players that know their level and what they're doing, and they suffer from lack of exposure because they developed into an NFL player. Now, the NFL will find you wherever you are. I'm not saying anything about that. But as far as recognition and the name, image, and likeness game, it'll be beneficial if you find your level. It also will be beneficial to people to come to Oxford because of the small town. There's going to be people willing to spend money on name, image, and likeness in Oxford, Starkville, and Hattiesburg. That's one benefit Mississippi is going to have that might get lost at Georgia Tech, that might get lost at UT Knoxville, might get lost at LSU. College Station is not going to get lost at College Station. It's not going to get lost in Fayetteville. It's not going to get lost in Tuscaloosa. It's not going to get lost in Auburn. Not going to get lost in Gainesville. Columbia might have a little bit of a problem. Lexington might have a little bit of a problem. So this is the name, image, and likeness game is going to benefit places where honestly there's not as much stuff to do. If you are near a professional sports city, those guys are going to get the endorsements. If you are in Senatobia, Mississippi, the quarterback might be able to hawk a car lot. Might be able to do different things. So that's something to keep an eye on. So what I'm saying there, the name, image, and likeness, Ole Miss is uniquely positioned to take advantage of that position. They're going in between number 9 and number 40. All the teams in there are going to be in the Goldilocks zone when it comes to this rule. Now, we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you why they are also going to benefit from the 12-team playoffs. But first, let's take this short break, and we'll come back with all kind of fun goodness. Hotty toddy. All right, welcome back to the POMcast. I am, of course, your host, Stephen Willis. I do want to tell you about the Rebel Walk. Evelyn and her team do a fantastic job. They have experts for all the different sports and provide a fun way to follow Ole Miss sports. They provide a subscriber-level experience for no money. Doesn't cost you anything but time, and boy, oh boy, is it worth it. If you have any questions, interests, you want to go over there and check it out at therebelwalk.com. That is therebelwalk.com. Now, we went over the one-time transfer and why Ole Miss hits the Goldilocks zone for the one-time transfer. Ole Miss also hits the Goldilocks zone in the 12-team playoff expansion. Honestly, more teams in the playoff, more benefit for Ole Miss. That's what this means. Even with basically 6 automatic berths and 6 at-large berths. So the at-larges, might be, all in the top 10 or whatever's going on. But we've already looked at it. They put out a list of the playoff of teams that would qualify. Both Ole Miss and State would have made at least one playoff under this format. This isn't some pie-in-the-sky thing where they're going to do something that's sitting for you. This is uniquely affecting you. This is coming into your wheelhouse. This is something not only can you do, you have a track record of doing. So, you have 6 teams that are the blue bloods of college football, basically. They can recruit to the playoff. You saw the separation between them and the next tier of teams because they were able to recruit those players and recruit based off the playoff. The playoff committee saw that. It was obviously not something they were going for. It was definitely an unintended consequence. Nobody was doing anything on purpose. They weren't protecting blue bloods. It just kind of worked out this way. Well, so they go to 12, or they're thinking of go to 12. It's not official yet, but I figure they'll announce it sometime between the now and the playoff this year. And they have to figure out how exactly it's going to work because, 12 teams, basically the semifinals and quarterfinals. Once you get to 8 teams left, you've got enough bowl games and the access bowls to handle it, basically. 2 semifinals, 4 quarterfinals, and 6 games or 6 access bowls. This was planned from the beginning. Don't think it wasn't. And the first round games being on campus, that'll even be cool too. Win some games, get a decent seed, get to host a team, and fought Hemingway Stadium on like December 15th. That'd be unbelievably cool. Host a team in Starkville on, December 15th. Host a team in Hattiesburg, which that would be a little bit more far-fetched, but Will Hall, I'm a big fan of Will Hall, and I think Southern's going to do some pretty fantastic things. It's a great hire on their part, really was. But this is another example of a rule change where Ole Miss is in the Goldilocks zone. The Blue Bloods didn't want this to happen. The separation between them and the next tier of football was beginning to happen. Teams like Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, to some extent. Last year kind of took a little bit of the shine off of that, but there's teams that's just been able to recruit to that. Clemson going into that every year, and you end up in the championship game of Alabama and Clemson seemingly every year. That last year was Alabama, Ohio State, but it's all part of the Blue Bloods. They're all recruiting those same 50 players. That's what people don't realize. There's roughly 50 playoff caliber players in college football every year. Period. There's not really more than that. There's good players, and there's players that you can develop into being really good players, but there's about 50 playoff caliber players every year. You need to be getting players from that top 50. And if you can recruit to the playoff, all of a sudden you've taken that top 50 from getting 5 of them to getting 10 of them. And then all of a sudden Clemson is getting 10 of them. And Ohio State is getting 10 of them, as opposed to formerly getting 5. You can recruit to it and the separation happens. That's the reason there's no parity in college football. Everybody is helpless feeling in college football because it's unintended consequences what has happened. Now, take that recruiting to the playoff. Now add the one-time transfer rule to it, to where those 10 players, if they go to Alabama and sit on the bench when they were told they weren't going to sit on the bench, they can get out of there. They can drop down a level. Alabama player going to Mississippi State. A Georgia player going to Vanderbilt. That brings up the level of the whole league. And next thing you know, you really do have an NFL light. And you also are recruiting below, and you're recruiting other power conferences. Because each conference that has a blue blood has to deal with keeping those guys happy. So they're going to disperse pretty much after 1 year. And eventually the blue bloods are going to catch on and sign less and less high school players, which means those high school players are going to be available to the next tier. So those 50 playoff level players that people build their roster on, and it's not, that's per year. So if you get 4 years of that, at 10 players a year, you're dealing with a 2 deep. That's how those guys get there. But with this one-time transfer, that number is going to thin out. You're going to drop the level of the team above you, and you're going to raise the level of the team below you. It's going to create a little bit of parity. And eventually, they're going to drop down and try and play the one-time transfer game, maybe from 22 players to 20. And that's extra high school players that are dropping down to tier two, that at one time was being stockpiled at a blue blood. This is how this is going to benefit Ole Miss down the road. Are there going to be unintended consequences? Absolutely. Every time they try to do something, there's always an unintended consequence. Now, what will that be? Will be the pendulum swinging too far the other direction to where you get massive amount of parity and there's no repeat winner of the national championship for 20 years? I doubt that, but what is going to be the unintended consequence? What is going to basically give you the heartstring pull that you were having? Because basically once this one-time transfer thing happens and all the name, image, and likeness, you're going to be dealing with basically mercenaries. There's not really going to be kids playing for the love of the game anymore. Maybe that's the unintended consequence. But it's very possible that this is going to change the interaction between older fans and the current team. What happens if maybe Meet the Rebel charges for autographs? I mean, that's possible. It's a nice way for them to make money. Just charge $1 a piece. So I do not know how this is going to look really down the road, but that's okay. I'm not a person that is set so much in the way things should be. I mean, there are people that go back to 1952, Ole Miss's win over Maryland, and the way the football looked now. If you looked at that and you looked at football today, it looks like a completely different game. Still college football. Still packed stands. Now, I've said over and over again that the decline in coverage is a little bit due to the advent of HD TVs and HD feeds of college football game and everything being on TV. I mean, why drive 3 hours when you don't have to, when you have that? I get that. But it's also happening because of the rise of the subscription service. People are now being the gatekeepers of knowledge, supposedly, and the death of the newspaper is killing college football. Places like Gainesville and areas where newspapers are struggling even more than some place that has like the Tupelo Daily Journal. Those guys are struggling more, so they're going to be more affected by the downturn of attendance as opposed to a place like Ole Miss, which has that newspaper. But be very careful with them being the gatekeeper of knowledge, because there's less opportunity for kids that 7, 8, 9 to become box score fans of teams, which is the gateway drug to being a full-fledged fan, and eventually a full-fledged traveling fan, and eventually a donor. So be careful about that. It could affect things in a very negative way if you allow it to spin out of control. But one of the reasons we are doing what we're doing is to allow a free avenue of information to show up on the internet and allow heartstrings to be pulled. So to counteract that subscription is the free site. But not many people have folks like me to where, I'm doing this full time out of my own pocket. I bought all the equipment. I'm not doing a full-time job at the moment because I'm doing this full-time. This has been a plan. I've built for this for 24 months. Got to the point in February and let's do it. Left my job the end of April. Let's do it. And you saw the uptick in the amount of videos and content that we're doing. So eventually we're going to sell ads for something like this. And by the way, if you're interested in ads, hit us up at positivelyolemiss@gmail.com. We're more than happy to have that conversation with you. We have a nice little ad prospectus that we would get out to you. And it's a good time to get in. Yesterday was our largest video in the history of, what we've been doing. We're currently well over 2,000 views. And I'm thankful for that. So thank you for doing that, because that's all on you guys. But, you look at all these rule changes and things that are changing inside college football. The only sure thing in life is change, period. Otherwise, you're a telegraph operator. You're a long-distance operator. That's just the way this works. We age out of things. Technology moves past things. So with college football and the college football experience, they're dealing with the same thing. Now, one thing, I'm not telling them exactly how to do their job or anything like that, but one thing to recognize, everything is so linear. Exit 1, exit 2, exit 3, exit 4. That's the way we handle with issues because we're a fairly reactionary culture when it comes to doing things. But if we can sit down and just eyeball what is going on, to me, it's no problem if you just ignore exit 1, exit 2, and exit 3, and then you make an informed decision come exit 4, and that completely changes everything. It's important to take your time on decisions. It is not a good idea to be reactionary. In fact, reactionary is usually the wrong answer. You are going to do something costly by being reactionary. So it is important to take your time and make the right decision. But, I kind of veered off a little bit there. But I do want to tell you that I do think Ole Miss is uniquely prepared to win the one-time transfer rule and the playoff rule. This has been a benefit for them, honestly. So now we have to go out and win games. If we win 10 games a year, which we've done recently, everybody remembers that. We've won 10 games. I think we've won 10 games the last 2 decades a couple of times. So we can do that, but that'll get you in the playoff. Get in the playoff, win a game, it could change everything inside that building. But thankfully, they changed the rule to get there. I always say, if the rules are stacked against you, get the rules changed. And that's what we've done. Otherwise, we're playing a game to where they're in the advantage at all time. They have better players. It's like 1980s football. Everybody line up in the I formation to run the football, and they've got better players. Go win. That all started to change. So I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes back. Well, no, it's actually right about on time. Thank you very much for watching today. We will be back Monday with more POMcast. And today, Rebel Rankings, the most electric non-QB offensive player in Ole Miss football history. 2 o'clock Central today. Enjoy that. Comment below. I don't mind if you disagree with me at all. I just want to hear what you guys think. I did put an honorable mention on the Positively Ole Miss page and everything, but we have a top 5 coming at 2 o'clock. So hope everybody enjoys their weekend. Be safe. Have fun. Hotty toddy.